Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Now We Olin. Today we're going to be discussing the Tonalpawali, the calendar, so to say. Um, as we know, the Tonalpawali is not much of a calendar as we understand calendar to mean today. The Tonalpawali is more of a almanac, describing certain cosmic events that transpired in mythological history. And when I say mythological history, I am alluding to something that is not linear historical fact, but is more of a non-linear truth. Let me explain. History, when it's done right, is an explanation of certain facts that transpired. And facts themselves are like a ring. We call this a ring. That's a fact. It's a ring. But a truth is something more than just a fact. A truth is something that goes beyond the isolated event. A truth is something that is eternal. It transcends time. So the stories, the myths that are inherent in the Tonalpawali are myths that transcend time itself. Of course, they explain time, they explain the cycle of time, but they go beyond time. They are truths that will always be throughout human nature, throughout the human existence. They are human truths. They are truths of our inner spirituality. They are not just isolated facts. They're not isolated to me. They're not isolated to you. They're not isolated to anybody else. So today we'll be discussing those things. We'll also be discussing telisli, the way of seeing clearly, the way of seeing truth clearly. And we'll be having a question and answer as well. So with that, we'll begin. In the story of the five sons, as we see here, the five sons, as you can see, we have the first son, the second son, the third son, the fourth son, and the fifth son. Now, everything started before the fifth son. It said that the universe was created between two opposing polar forces. On the one hand, we had the mother goddess and we had the father god. Now, when we use the word God is kind of the wrong word to use because the Nahuas never had an idea of a God, so to say, some entity that has always existed that created reality. They had more of an idea of energy. So they refer to them as Teot, and energy. So we have the feminine energy and we have the masculine energy. We have the receptive energy and we have the active energy. We have two opposing energies. And when I say opposing, I mean that they are opposites. They repel each other. But at the same time, the opposite of that is also true. They do not just repel each other, they also compel each other. So at one and the same time, they are one complementary force cut in half, or they are two polar opposite forces going against each other. So they repel and they attract at the same time. Now, it's said that this energy, this force, which we refer to as Omet Teot, the two energy, existed. Just the energy itself existed, but the energy was repelling and attracting at the same time. And during its state of repelling, it created the four ages, the four cycles of time, or the four eras of time. The first sun. Now we have to understand that the word sun, it alludes to a day or amount of time, a segment of time. So when we say sun, we literally mean day, a tonali, day or sun. So we're referring to a certain cycle of time. So during the first cycle of time, they had the first sun. Now, they didn't just have a sun as in the solar force, but they also had a sun as in a child, So in our language, the two are synonymous, but they literally had children, four children, and each one was associated with the solar sun. The first son was known as Nawi Ocelot, or four jaguar. Four jaguar, at this moment in time, was the ruler of the universe. And everything existed under this first age. Now, the two forces of the male and the female force are expressed in our mythology as the feathered serpent and the smoking mirror. The story says that the smoking mirror and the feathered serpent were both on each side creating and destroying the four ages. So the first one was created, and then it was destroyed to give creation to the second age. So what we're seeing here is the first age is going to be destroyed so that the second age can prosper. So the second age is known as Nawi Ehekat, for wind. As the first age or son dies, the first brother, the first child of the two energy, as the first child is born and then dies, this one comes into effect. So this is Nawi Ehekat, for wind. But then the third age is going to come into effect, but the third age has to get rid of this age. So this one has to be destroyed so that the third age can live. And this is Nawi Kiawi. Kiawi is of rain fire. So it's for rain fire. This is the age of fire. And then lastly is Nawi'at, for water. So for water comes in and runs this particular era in time into for water also dies. So what we're seeing here is a cyclical event of life and death. We're seeing the first age come into existence, and then the second age is coming, and this one's being destroyed so this one can live, and this one's destroying this one so this one can live. So it's a cycle of destruction and creation over and over and over. Now these four brothers all allude to the four directions. Now we have to understand at an analytical level that the four directions per se are not really truly real in a true sense. In a factual sense they are. It's a fact that this way is north, this way is east, this way is south, and this way is west. It's logical, it's a fact. But in its true sense, the true sense, there is no north, east, south, and west in reality. These are mental constructs that we've developed, that we've created. We have chopped up the one whole of space and time, and we have imaginarily put lines between north, east, south, and west. So when I look north, if I go further enough north, I end up south. If I go further enough east, I end up west. But these abstract concepts of space are tools that we utilize to navigate our way into the world. So they're very useful. So as a fact, they're useful, they're utilities. But as a truth, they do not truly exist. So we have two ways of looking at the world. We have the way of looking at the world beyond the fact and looking at it truthfully, and then looking at the facts that we have constructed to fit the world and its categories. So what you're seeing here is that two dynamic polar opposites, those two ways of seeing the world, both being integrated. We have the feathered serpent, who is a symbol of wisdom, and we have Tezcatlipoca, the illusion god, the god of trickery and deception, the god of rulership. These two polar opposites represent two ways of looking at the world. Looking at it through clarity or looking at it through the darkness. Now the darkness is alluded to, is an allusion to the way in which we see life as categorical. When we chop everything up, you versus me, north, east, south, west, you're from that side, I'm from this side, we're from different parts of town, etc. But when we look at it through the eyes of wisdom, we learn to look beyond the categories and see things a little deeper. So the story tells of these four brothers who consecutively took power into the universe. They took power and had their moment in time and space. Now when the four sons die, as the story goes, the mother and father, having created four different eras of time and four different universes, the mother and father bring these four into the middle. So the four brothers are resurrected in the middle. The middle is the point of unity where everything becomes one at the center. So we see the unity of the mother and father separating into the four directions, into the four categorical sequences, the four categorical squares as we call it. But now on the fifth era, they are brought together in unity, and mother and father create the fifth son, the age that we live in now, this existence we live in now. So in this existence, we don't see just holy dirt or wholly air, or just completely fire, or all water. In this existence, we have fire, water, earth, wind, all together, moving in harmony, in motion, constantly creating and destroying this era. And this is what we call the fifth sun. So when we refer to the fifth sun, we're referring to the existence as it is that we live in today. Okay? So we're referring to reality. When we talk about the fifth sun, we're referring to reality. When we talk about the four previous suns, we're talking about past ages. And we can even go deeper than this. We can look at this as a metaphor to describe how we look at life today. Every moment is an existent reality. It's alive. It is now. It is the fifth sun. So every single moment we're living in the fifth sun, in the world of enlightenment, in the world of the now. But every moment that passed is associated with the past, meaning that's already died. So right now, from the time I'm speaking now, from the time I started this video, that moment is dead. That moment does not exist. In truth, it does not exist. It only exists in the mind. So it represents the past. And we can use this metaphor as a way to understand how to not hold on so deeply to something that is already dead, and to live in the present moment. Now, the four brothers are resurrected to create this world that we live in today. The story is said that during these four creations and destructions, there are two energies, both creating and one destroying. The Tezcatlipoca is destroying, and Quetzalcoatl is creating. Now, for something to exist, something else has to be destroyed. In order for us to create anything new, we have to destroy the old. And this is very relevant, not only in the physical world, but also in the spiritual and the psychological sense. That in order for us to grow, we have to let go of the past, and we have to let that destroy itself. We have to let it dissolve so that we can create something new. And every moment we're constantly doing this. This is a constant motion. The world is always moving. Change is inevitable. But we have to change with it. There are two ways of seeing life again. But those two ways aren't necessarily two. They're also one. Let me explain to you. We have here a whiteboard. So it said that the first creation, or the center, is the mother and father. The two energies as one, but it's also the now. The age that we live in now. It's reality that we live in now. And here we have the past ages. Our ancestors referred to these past ages as the four Tezcatlipocas, the four smoking mirrors. And when we look into a smoking mirror, we see a cloudy, blurry image of who we are. So we see a distorted image of who we are. Not only that, but it was believed that when you looked into the mirror, because the mirror surface is black. So when you're looking into the mirror, you're seeing a black reflection of the world. Our ancestors conceived that the underworld, Mictlan, the world of the dead, was a place of darkness. So they believed that these mirrors were portals into the underworld. So that when you're looking into it, you're looking into not this world, but a reflection of this world that is dead. So when you're looking at your mirror, your reflection in the mirror, not only are you seeing it distorted, but you're seeing a sense of identity that is dead. So you're not seeing your true reflection, your true identity. You're seeing a dead identity. Now, all our identities are based on past. Everything that we've been taught. All of our past conditionings. And yet we hold on to those past things. Sometimes the things that we hold on to the past no longer serve us in the present. So we have to reevaluate those things. But when we don't reevaluate them, we get stuck and we stagnate. We're still holding on to the past. We're still holding on to the death identity, the identity that's already dead. In order for you to live in the now, you have to constantly be moving, constantly change. And this is what we call the shapeshifter. The shapeshifter is constantly changing and evolving and letting go of previous preconceptions and ideas of who he is and what he should do. He is always creative and always coming up with new ways and new inventive ways of doing things. And he's not afraid to take risks. So we have the past way of seeing things. So when I speak of facts, there's two ways of looking at the world. Through the smoking mirror, or what our ancestors referred to as the mirror of clarity. They said there was 5 mirrors. The 4 smoking mirrors, the Tezcatlipocas, and the 5th mirror was known as the Tezcatlanextia, which means the mirror of clarity, or the mirror of light. Tlanextia represents truth. It is the word for truth. But it just doesn't mean truth. It also means to uncover something, to remove something. So when we uncover, we see underneath. Let me show you what I mean. We have 2 mirrors here. In the beginning, everything was clear. But then the mother and father created division, direction, logic, and categories. The 4 sons. Now everything, when we look at the world through this lens here, the smoking mirror, everything is logically categorized as so. Everything has a name and everything has an identity. And those identities are fixed and stagnant. Like, this is a stool, this is a table. Table, stool, you are whatever your name is, and vice versa, etc., etc. So everything gets chopped up into little categorical sections. The opposite way of looking at the life is to see everything as one, as totally clear, as nameless, mysterious, and full of potential and possibilities. So we have the smoking mirror, which clouds, and we have the clear mirror, which provides illumination. Now these are 2 opposites. We have to ask ourselves, which way of looking at the world is the correct way? Is it this way? Or is it this way? Actually, it's both, yet neither. Let me show you what I mean. We have this way of looking at the world, and we have this way of looking at the world. What we have to do is, we have to unify both ways. So we're not looking at it just wholly through the clear way of looking at life, as a big old, a big clear mass of we do not know. Nor do we have to look at it in an isolated way in which we categorize everything and everything is just separated. We have to look at it here in the middle, where we use categories and we use names and identities, but yet we're also existing in this realm, the clear realm. So we're in the middle. We have to exist in the middle. And this is what we allude to when we say the feathered serpent, because this is the lower way of thinking and this is the higher way of thinking. We have the serpent here and we have the feather here. Now the feathered serpent, his name is Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl has various layers of meaning, but to simplify things, the serpent symbolizes the ground, and the Quetzal feather symbolizes the sky. But the word Quetzal, from which we name the feather, is derived from the word Quetzal, which means to stand upright. So when something stands upright, it's pointing directly upwards, whereas a serpent stands sideways and alludes to the horizontal. The feather alludes to the vertical. So we have a horizontal way of looking at things, the way of the smoking mirror, and then we have a vertical way of looking at things. We have to exist in the middle between the horizontal and the vertical. And this is an enlightened way of looking at life. This is when we have integrated both parts of ourselves, our lower nature and our higher nature. And when you're able to do that, you have become the return of the feathered serpent. Now, I'm going to allow questions at this moment. And I'm going to have somebody ask me some questions. And we'll answer those questions. You have a question?
Yes. So I have a question about the calendar behind you. So, what is the meaning of the 2 faces at the bottom?
These are fire serpents. Each one of these represent a flame or a light of a ray of fire. So it was said that one particular energy named Wesley Bochley, he conquered the darkness, but he conquered it with his fire serpent. Okay, his fire serpent was what he used to get rid of the moon and the stars. The story goes that the earth was impregnated with this so-called sun god, the sun energy, solar energy. But the moon and the stars did not want him to be born, so they conspired to kill him. However, he rose from his mother's womb, which we see every morning in the east as the sun rises. And with his light, his fire serpent, he vanquished, or he broke apart the moon, and the stars ran, they fled, which is day. Now the moon is symbolic of Tezcatlipoca. When we look at the sun, it's symbolic of the mirror of light, whereas the moon is the mirror of smoke. So we have two polar opposite ways of looking at things. The dark way and the light way. Again, they allude to the dark way and the light way. So we have to be in the middle ground. But in order to do that, we have to have the clarity to see through the darkness. And that's what the moon represents. It represents a certain way of looking at life through basically ego and ego identifications and identifying everything as fixed and static. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one more. I noticed that the calendar sort of resembles a compass because you have the arrows pointing north, west, east, and south. Does that have any meaning?
Sure. Again, there is a moral lesson to be learned here. When we separate as a people, not just as a tribe, but as a universal movement of all human beings, all existence in the fifth sun, when everything separates to the four directions, we disintegrate and we latch on to false identities and we fight each other and we argue and we kill and we bicker and all these other things that are based on ego identifications of one direction or one particular category. When this happens, it leads us to a lot of suffering and despair. But when we come to the middle and we realize that light, it is now up to us as people of the sun, people of enlightenment, to shed that light back out, to teach people, to share the knowledge, to share the wisdom. Not just through the logic of words, but also through our actions. Any other questions?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay. So that'll conclude today's lesson. Stay tuned for another lesson in which I will describe the word Olin and the word Oli. So look forward to that and click down below, subscribe, and stay tuned. And everybody have a nice day. Peace out.